We are at Marcus Garvey Park for an event on Assata Shakur, who is an activist, but is presently in exile in Cuba. This is an event of the Free University of New York City. As I say, we are presently in Marcus Garvey Park. The Free University has university events in various public locations throughout the city of New York City.
What's up, Dentang? Hey, Dent. Oh, yeah. Hey, how are you? Connor. Nice to meet you. Yeah, feel free to, if you want to, even just drop your bike right here. Folks are going to be hanging out at the table all afternoon.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I'll walk it up in a few minutes.
Oh, okay, right on.
Right after when I was in sandwich.
And this is the schedule for today. Starts on the third page.
Thanks, Connor.
You're welcome.
I'm
doing well. This summer has begun in slightly different start, but it's been you know how like there's like the birds kind of like that. Like summer very gracefully unfold. I didn't quite have that.
You said all that.
But yeah, I'm thankful to getting and so your class is getting started already.
Hi.
That's good, y'all. How's it going? Yeah, bring it in. Been a while. How are you? Hey, how are you? Yeah, we're gonna go on a walk. Schedule for the day. And already two workshops have gotten started. One over here. Going away. It's still a party, right? So at least there's a party. Here, discussion. Yeah.
Yeah, for raspberries, I should have gotten like another one.
Are people okay with being
Sharing his way.
I'm fine. Yeah, I'm okay.
You're okay with it? No, thank you. Sir, do you mind not filming me? Thank you very much. So, this was discussing a time in which being whatever race you were was a major part of your identity, whether you liked it or not. And that just strikes me as a very powerful concept and tragic one, and that's one of the reasons why I said it was these kinds of situations. Whether they have considered it or not,
Hi. As I said before, this is a free university event in Marcus Garvey Park in New York City. The Free University has various educational events in New York City at various public locations. I'm part of Collectivist Media.
So a couple of these ones are getting started. I haven't met them. Shocking is that
This forum is the new Jim Crow, war on drugs,
starting in the 70s. So in
and the massive incorporation industrial complex.
1,000 people in prison nationwide. Remember, please don't film me. Are you okay with me filming? Okay. And compared to now, you have 2.2 million people in prison. So 200,000, 1972, 2.2 million.
We have another event over here, which is when the Chicago moving people out of their homes and then moving them back in. That's a left form, they called it Take Back the Land. They put flags on the various locations of the various clashes, you might say.
Yes, I believe so. Yeah. I'm not too familiar with the definition, but yeah, I believe so. And yeah. So I just talked briefly about the Chicago and South African anti-racism campaign. I know Jen. What's your name?
I'm Puck.
Puck. Do you want to introduce someone?
Sorry to be late.
Oh. Okay, yeah. So I can go back and talk about it if you like. Okay. So in general, I was just talking about how so I'll start from the beginning. The South Africa anti-eviction campaign was an effort to resist displacement of this program called PEER, which is the Growth, Employment, and Redistribution program that the city wanted to enforce. And they resisted some of the efforts that GEAR was trying to do, which was to displace in order to revitalize for the World Cup in 2010. And so they did resist some displacement. And then Tessa was talking about how some people actually were displaced. But I'm hearing that through the anti-eviction campaign, which those who were dwelling in squatter settlements were able to resist some of the displacement and was able to stay in place. But obviously there were some folks who were displaced, and so they were able to remain in place. And then others were inspired by their efforts in Chicago. And so the chairman of the anti-eviction campaign helped with the Chicagoans who, their names are Toussaint Massiere and JR, and they worked together with the chairman to sort of discuss how this can happen in Chicago. And so JR and Toussaint came up with a plan where they would take over foreclosed homes in Chicago, mostly South Side, more African American area. And it became a way to take over these sort of take over vacant housing and lots, or mostly housing, and put people in those housing, and ultimately allow for, and would allow for them to take over the housing was a beautification code within the city of Chicago sort of law, and they were able to take over the housing, beautify it, and then remain there. And so that's a movement that's going on in Chicago and South Africa, and sort of like international, transnational. So it's awesome. So this talk or like free use session is just to like have dialogue about what other types of resistance you may have heard of that's similar to this, and how something like this can happen in New York, if at all possible, to moderate homelessness and things like that. So,
Have you heard of Take Back the Land in Miami?
no, I haven't heard about it in Miami, but I've heard about them, and I don't know much about what they do though.
I had two friends who were really involved in that a few years ago.
Oh, okay.
And it was really dope. But this one person wrote a book on it, which is actually one of like the most kind of put together like little books I've read. Just sort of, he's very like transparent about his own experience and very like witty and stuff like this. And I don't know, it's just like this interesting insight into the limits of like working within the system and then trying to push at it, because what they did at first, they had a similar kind of, I actually don't want to be filmed if you don't mind.
Excuse me for interrupting, but you can see Take Back the Land from last Friday at the West Forum in the videos there.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. But so what they found like a similar arcane little law that allowed for people, if it was city land, if it was like state or city land, and no one was residing on it, then you could establish ownership over it if you stayed for more than like 7 years or something like this. And so they tried to set up, they set up these shanty towns, and then it was like mostly Pan-Africanist type sort of people who were organizing around this. And I think they had the shanty town there for about 6 months. And during that time they got, all kinds of responses. Like the neighborhood they were in was like a working class, low income neighborhood, and a lot of people were really, really into it. But a lot of people who stayed at the camp were like primarily homeless people and a lot of active drug users. And the people who were organizing were like kind of long-term community organizers, a lot from like the labor movement. So it was like an interesting thing. And then at some point, these politicians got involved, like the city politicians, and a couple of them that were like that had like their own agenda with it were like, oh, we'll totally support you. But then they got totally betrayed, and then like the whole thing got mysteriously burnt down. So it was, Oh my god.
Yeah,
it was very dramatic. I think this was all like 2006 or so, 2007 maybe. But there's this book, it's called Take Back the Land, and it's written by Max Rameau.
Okay.
And it's really interesting.
Awesome.
And they just closed this organization at the
Take
last
Back the
forum.
Land.
Yeah,
Okay.
They just
closed it.
Why?
They thought that they wanted to raise it to a national level from the Miami experience, and they did do some takeovers, and they helped people with resisting evictions and things like this. But they felt that it was not achieving the impact that they were hoping. So they decided to close this particular organization and then start new things.
Like that was like a coalition or something?
Yes, after a while, I think it had a lot of local chapters. So it had Take Back the Land here, Take Back the Land there, and I think some of the local chapters may be working, but I think as a national thing, they sunsetted it.
How is that different, or is that the same thing as Right to the City?
No, that's an alliance or a coalition.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. And I think that started in New York and then became national. And I think that's more kind of a professional lobbying organization. Take Back the Land was more based on organizing.
Yes. Definitely more professional. But it's funny how like both of the anti-eviction campaigns are using the legal system and lawyers to fight for their rights and accumulate rights and to remain enslaved, at the same time doing these sort of like grassroots practices. And like, I think it's awesome. I think it's very interesting to think about, and thinking about like the history of like American sort of civil rights. I find that and now like where we are today, I feel like a lot of people are working within the space of like, we need to talk to a politician and negotiate some kind of act or bill, and then and I don't think it's helping people right now for their basic needs. And we're in a time where services are being cut left and right, schools are being closed down, and charter schools are going up, and there's a lot of privatization going on, and there's not enough public. And so, I don't know, in somewhere like New York City, it seems hard to even think about grassroots resistance when that's why I came to New York, and I don't see it here, and I'm discouraged a bit. So this is more just a time to just like reflect and like think of other ways and share. If you guys know of any grassroots orgs, but yeah, I don't see it out here, so I'm a bit.
What's up with the Sunset Park? What's up with the Sunset Park tenant strike thing?
Oh, right, that's right, the tennis strike. Oh, I'm not familiar with it. Do you know more about it?
I mean, I have a couple of friends who work on it, but I actually just moved here a week ago. I grew up here, and then I moved away for 9 years, and now I'm sort of back.
Oh, awesome. Cool. No, I've heard about, I don't know what organization that's through, but I have been hearing about the tennis strike. Not just like, oh, there's a tennis strike. I don't know much about it though.
I think it's pretty not professional. I think it's pretty autonomous and
Awesome.
yeah.
So, because there's that whole strike debt movement where they've been buying medical debt, and then earlier you had referenced people buying it for close to something not. And so there's that similar tactic, I guess, of buying up debt and then solving.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not
So strike debt is a movement that started up maybe about a year and a bit ago. And so what they did was then collect essentially donations from mostly individuals, but also I think some groups as well, and pool it together and then take that large pool of donations and buy out people's medical debt. And I think they might have started moving into education debt, but definitely started with medical debt and basically wiping out people's medical debt because of the value of that debt has deflated so much that it's almost like in this reversed investment kind of idea. I'm not an economist by any means, so I'm probably butchering the terms, but the idea, and that same idea with foreclosure where the value of it has already decreased so much that essentially for a tenth of the value you buy back all that debt.
Right. Yeah, I've heard about this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, there's all these things that with medical debt, it's almost a little bit more fungible, but whereas with housing and homes, it's a little bit harder. And that pool, you need so much more in order to buy mortgages, foreclosed mortgages. Right. That might be, I mean, the ethos behind it is one thing, but then the tangible logistical element is so much harder.
Right. And I think that's something unique about the Chicago situation is that they didn't fundraise for money from others to buy debt. They simply just used the beautification law and our code and just did some sweat equity and people were able to be in those spaces or in the housing. And so in terms of the buying of debt or the strike debt, for those who do go back into their homes, do they have to then begin to continue to pay some type of
I'm not familiar. Mm-hmm. And I know in Minneapolis they've done a lot more. I've seen some examples of really good examples where people were able to literally just occupy the homes and then and just stay on it. But I'm not so sure. And I don't know what the laws are here either. We refer to the beautification laws. I don't know whether that's something that's available.
Some people have talked about the Responsible Bankers Act, and I'm not informed about it, but there is something within that act that would allow us to not probably to get a count of vacant properties in some way, or it puts a restriction on how long either a particular property particular property can remain vacant for. And some people have said that we can probably use that in a way to do something like the stuff in Chicago, but I'm not as informed about that. But I think it's a viable option. And I think it has two parts. One part of the Responsible Bakers Act is the foreclosure foreclosed properties. There's a limitation on how long those can be vacant for, I think. And then I'm not sure about the second half, but I think it's relating to like lots and things like that, but I'm unsure.
And are those residential lots or are they just commercial lots?
It may be commercial, but I'm unsure. So, yeah. Would anyone know about the Responsible Bankers Act at all?
Should we just look it up?
I wish I had.
Oh, there's
here.
not.
I wish I had more info too, but.
So because I was late, I apologize.
No worries.
So can you give me a little bit more background on the South Africa,
Sure. So I'll just give like an
overview?
Yeah, I'll give an overview. So the South Africa anti-eviction campaign, it was started in 2001, and it was an aim to resist the growth. It's called GEAR, the Growth and Employment Redistribution Program, which was sort of like a municipal city sort of policy or program that was aiming to revitalize South Africa and to get in sort of gear for the World Cup.
Oh, okay.
So that's what they were doing. And then I actually don't want the camera so into me. And so what they did was so the anti-eviction campaign was resisting some of the displacement that the GEAR program was doing. And they were able to use the legal system as well as sort of this like resistance strategy just to remain in place and to not get bulldozed away. They sort of like did like, I think, like blockades and things like that, and just like stayed in place. And they were able to resist it and stay in place. And then that, I think, was the Chicago anti-eviction campaign was inspired by the South Africa anti-eviction campaign. And the chairman of that campaign, the South African one, talked to Toussaint Lassier and JR, which are some organizers. Toussaint Lassier is actually a PhD candidate at the University of Chicago. But they got together with that chairman and sort of, he sort of helped them in some way to like mentor and advise them. And then they decided to sort of beautify foreclosed vacant property and then put families, mostly like women and children, into those housing.
Yeah, I just want to know, like, I feel like even when it comes to, like, when you hear beautification, a lot of times it's just, like, a pathway also for, like, gentrification in neighborhoods. So it's, like, it'd be really interesting to see, like, I could definitely see how that would backfire in a lot of ways.
Yes.
Like, for the people who were, like, kicked out of their homes, and, like, beautification happens, and then they open them, or, like, they're available in market. So do you know of any? Because I feel like that's one thing that when I hear beautification of neighborhoods, I see that a lot. Like people, they still lose their homes.
Well, I think what's unique about this is that they use like the Chicago municipal code to beautify and to remain in housing, and they use their own sort of sweat equity to do so, and they're helping people that are very low income, homeless, stay in these housing. Now it's a backfire. On one hand, it's a benefit for those in those neighborhoods who have been seeing these vacant housing being vacant for like 2 years, and then finally someone's doing something about it, and it's for the benefit of people who are like them, like low income, and this is a mostly African American area.
Do you know if that was part of the code, like where they could bring people who like need housing into that, or is it just something they're able to?
This is Free University in Marcus Garvey Park in New York City. This is Saturday, the year 2013, June. like the 15th, I think, or near. This is another class on the new Jim Crow thing and the prison industrial complex.
And you know, they're subject to go into solitary confinement. And that's something that I'm not even going to talk about right now because that's a whole other discussion. But solitary confinement is a form of torture. You have people who are locked up in solitary for months for having more than one stamp than they're allowed, or saying I'm not hungry right now, and they get put in the box. And then the final stage is the invisible wall, and that's when you get out of prison. And you're not allowed public housing, you're not allowed welfare, you're not allowed food stamps, you're not allowed to vote unless you live in Maine or Vermont. They're the only two states that allow ex-convicts to vote. And basically, you probably end up back in prison if you violate parole, and you become, if not, just marginalized for the rest of your life as an American citizen in our great democracy. I told you, please.
No, I'm not on you.
Okay, thanks. So I'm going to end it there. If you guys have any questions or you want to talk about your own perspectives and experiences, I also have some other stuff that, you know, if we can't get the ball rolling, we can talk about, like some stuff Obama's done and not done. But I'll throw it out there for questions, and I'll take a stab. So if you just want to talk. So yeah, it is kind of like heavy. I just in about 10 minutes hit you with a lot of really horrible institutions.
Yeah. Now this is just a continuing. It's like this. I'm thinking about mass incarceration and like the persecution of black and brown people in the States. It's like come to realize this is a country not for us at all in any way. Like the last time this country had a chance to be a place that was actually that there was real equality for people of color and people not of color, and it was during the Reconstruction era after the Civil War. So right after the Civil War, you had the emancipation of the slaves. There were actually a lot of black men being elected to the Senate and Congress all over states in the South, and there was I forget where it happened. There was a meeting in which there were a bunch of abolitionists and black politicians meeting, and then they were all massacred, and like the all black regiments from the Civil War were all massacred, and then like that kind of just set the, like for me, like the last nail in the coffin for the American experiment as a country where there is a chance for equality anyway. So like, fuck this place. Yeah, well that's the tip I'm on right now.
I just want to say that I think it was kind of sad. There was statistics that shown that there were more black men in prison than in college, and I thought that was crazy. But fortunately, recently, my professor told me that it changed, and there's actually more black men being enrolled in college now. So I guess we are kind of taking another turn, but it's unfortunate that those statistics were crazy. Like, it's just really, really bad.
I would add that, ironically, now there are increasing numbers of black women going to jail as opposed to black men. So the trend is still affecting our communities.
And it's crazy because women are minorities too. So an African American female is like double. Like, so yeah.
It's great.
I went to undergrad in Michigan, and Michigan sociologically is the most segregated state in the country still. Unfortunately, they actually have the Jim Crow Museum at Central Michigan University. And I was a part of a group called Act on Racism, and it was this group of students that got together because there's just so much tension when you're at a university, like a liberal arts school, and then you have all these people from different places where, like, you know, everyone holds up the hand for Michigan, right? If you are coming to this school, so there's some people who have actually never seen a person of color in real life before. So in 2006, they actually had a couple, you know, they one thing of like hate crimes, they changed the shit to bias incidents. So we have no hate crimes because they call them bias incidents and then they cover them up. So anyway, we had 2 bias incidents in 2006. And one was there was a gay couple and they got spat on. So it's not just assault but battery, like an actual action taken. And then they wrote the N-word on one of the freshman dorms. So there was just so much tension going on campus that we got this group together, and my advisor, she's a sociology professor, and she specializes in food, sociology of food, which is really interesting, and sociology of race and ethnicity. And so she had one of her assignments where she had the students in her class do an act of resistance to racism, whatever form, whether it's not like politics of hair or, you know, something like whatever it is. And she just had all this stuff just sitting on, you know, like we've got to do something with it. So we started performing these skits in front of people just to start a dialogue, because there's so many people like, oh, I don't even see race. Everyone's all the same, because especially in like the 80s, they had the whole color blindness thing where we're all one and one is all, and like you're totally inherently denying the fact that the playing field's not even. So what we started doing on campus, we started doing it with, you know, freshmen and different groups and just performing it for the community. And we've done professional things, going in, you know, diversity training, like you can train someone in diversity, I don't know. But anyway, so we're doing what we can do just to start the dialogue, because a lot of times people just don't want to talk about it. So I think it was like, I really liked, you know, your discussion on it, because I'm really familiar with this. I'm considering the work that I've done. But yeah, it's really interesting to see how, even with Assata Shakur and like how they're bringing her name up now again after how many fucking years? Like, I mean, come on. Like, what are they really trying to show you? Like, the thing is like, okay, look over here. I'm waving at you and something. Like, let me just put another $1 million, because it's really not about the fucking money at all anyways. Because they don't want you to really look at the big picture. They're like distracting you. Like Fox. I don't know. Anyways, I'm rambling. But but that's like the whole point, right? Like the fact that this is what's really going on. Like things like this, we can all come together and actually talk about what's happening.
Yeah, I think color blindness is horrible. I hate when people say I don't see color. Like you need to be conscious of what's going on, because it's going on.
Yeah.
Like, wake up.
Like the skits that I'm mixed, and people always are like, well, so what are you? Like you're so exotic, but like the fact that you say that shit, like the tokenism, like oh you're so like just the like that branch. Like we would never like, so where are you really from? Oh, I'm clearly not a New Yorker. I'm originally from Oakland, right? But I went to school in Michigan and grew up in like the Midwest. So I've got like West Coast, Midwest, and now a little East Coast. But they're like, no, but like, where are you from?
Right? I like that.
So like, but where do you? Yeah, like. Are you like? The other day I was wearing this dress and it was like navy blue and white. And someone goes, "Are you Greek?" I'm like, "Cause your dress looks like the flag of Greece." I'm like, motherfucker, this is not even the right blue. I'm like, you just are pulling that out of your ass right now. I've had someone ask me about Macedonia, which was really creative. I've never had that one before. But you know, just that space of like tokenism of like how I have my race, because I'm Asian American, but I'm perceived as more Latin American. When, you know, I'm actually biracial and mixed, and like, so it's just this really interesting place with intersectionality for me where I identify. There's a queer woman of color who's mixed, who's, you know, all over the place, and the assumptions that we make about those kinds of things. Yeah. You know, it's really interesting. Yeah.
There are two things. The last point you made is a kind of a conflict in talking with people. It's something you alluded to earlier. I mean, scientifically, race doesn't exist.
Right.
When the first Vikings landed in Africa, everybody on one side looked white, everybody on the other side looked black. The real difference was ethnicity, was culture. There's no such thing as race.
Exactly. It's socially constructed, just like gender.
Exactly. So that's I said that once to somebody who's working in sociology. He said, so what about racism?
Well, what about it?
Yeah, that exists. You know, slavery really existed. But so it's difficult to talk about in a fluid way, because I think it's confusing to people.
It is, and even within the space of like the work that we do, people are like, well, why are you working on racism? Because like, well, what about feminism, like sexism, and what about heterosexism, and what about classism? Like, why are you picking on this one ism to focus on? But like for us, it was just like this one space of where we were, and it is so intersectional. When you address one ism, to me anyways, you are inherently addressing the other, because they're all so multifaceted. So when we're performing like an example, one of my friends, we are more masculine center, and she had men's jeans on. They're a little baggy, but those fitted nice for her shape. And they wouldn't let her in this club one night. And there was this guy who had like these really, oily, dingy like Walmart jeans to put on. And they were gonna let him in the club, but they're gonna let her in with
We are at the Free University, New York City, at Marcus Garvey Park.
In Cuba.
But I'm just saying, like, when you say, don't wear this, don't wear that, no do-rag, no chain, you're inherently saying we don't want this kind of person, these kind of people in our club. Yeah. Yeah, the whole thing. I like the skater boy.
Should I go over to
Right, like,
Okay. And you say that I plant myself as early as I need.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely.
Probably not, right? My co-presenter is lost.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird part. It's like it's on the other side of the rock. Well, they can find fifth.
As I say, this
I didn't chop it.
is an event with emphasis on Assata Shakur,
Other street over there, huh?
who is in exile, political activist, who is in exile in Cuba.
But we saw a park there too, right? Maybe that's another park or something.
That is Park Avenue. That's. I mean, they might have like Park East or Park West or something. I mean, this park, but.